Welcome to the Navik Gaming Podcast, where it is our mission to explore the business and future of video games. We bring together the industry's brightest builders, investors, and thinkers to keep a pulse on current events, dissect emerging trends in games, share lessons learned, and have a great time. This podcast is also part of Navik's growing ecosystem, which ranges from free and premium research to consulting and advisory services. For more information, visit www.navik.co. This episode is brought to you by Pragma. Pragma is a back-end game engine founded by the engineering leaders who built the platforms for some of the largest live service games, including League of Legends, Fortnite, Destiny 2, and Plants vs. Zombies 2. Pragma powers services like accounts, matchmaking, and player data for the world's most ambitious live service games. The Pragma backend game engine is the only solution that is truly extensible so that game designers aren't blocked by clumsy black box designs. With Pragma, studios no longer need to hire a large backend team and get the ultimate peace of mind that their game will always be ready to scale. To learn more, simply head to pragma.gg or check out the link in the show notes. And with that, let's jump into the episode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Navik Gaming Podcast. I'm your host, Alexandra Takei, and this is the Interview and Insights segment. In the gaming world, the first thing folks think of when they hear the word betting is Skillz. And then they get really nervous and they shy back a bit, given the journey Skillz has been on since its IPO. Skillz, as most people in the audience probably know, was a tech hype riches to underperformance sort of story. The app, for those who don't remember, enabled game developers to incorporate competitive gaming elements into their mobile games. This included stuff like leaderboards, multiplayer competitions, and other features that were meant to enhance player engagement and retention. And most importantly, it added a level of RMG, real money gaming, as we say in the biz, to your game. Skillz' stock, which once peaked at an EPS of $8.75, today trades at around $9. And so I was thinking to myself, like, surely because of Skillz' story, player betting in games could not be a thing, or at least a profitable thing. And then I realized that I personally just didn't know a ton about the betting world and why, at its core, Skillz wasn't performing well. And so I remember I had a friend building in the space, Zach Dixon, who is joining me on air today. Zach is the founder of Players Lounge, a Series A venture-backed company that is, simply put, allowing players to bet on themselves. I sold this from the website, did not make that up. They have game integrations, mostly in sports games, aka Madden, NBA 2K, FIFA, etc., and allow players to host tournaments, head-to-head competitions, and streaming competitions. So welcome to the pod, Zach.
Thank you so much for having me. First-time caller, very long-time listener.
Oh, okay. Well, we're glad to have you on. This episode is actually inspired by a old Navik Pro article within our financial markets segment for Skillz that I recently reread because of a conversation I was having in a bar the other day down in Orange County on whether gamers want to actually bet on gaming outcomes. I've been traveling a lot post-graduation, so like now this is what Friday nights basically look like.
Very sexy Friday nights.
But this person in the bar I was chatting with was pretty much like forcefully disagreeing with my supposition that betting couldn't be a profitable thing for games and adjacent services. When I say adjacent, I meant like under the assumption that AAA studios never open up their own betting rails. And I kept thinking about it though. And actually, even at Blizzard, we thought about small things that had to do with betting. Like, what if we could bet on like the Brawl card in Hearthstone taking out everything except for like the 1/1 Dragon Whelp? Or like, what if we could bet that this useless Genji would do under X% damage in Overwatch? And so for me, I guess the question was still open in my mind based on this conversation I was having with this friend is to like whether or not the decline of Skillz specifically is something to do with the platform or the innate lack of demand for gamers, or a business model that hasn't been quite figured out. So you're here to help me out, and we're here to talk about it on air. So I gave you Players Lounge a bit of an overview, but would love to hear about your background as a founder, what got you into the space, and sort of what's new for the company these days.
Sure. So my name is Zach Dixon. I'm co-founder and COO at Players Lounge. And started the company with my buddy, Austin Woolridge. We were teammates at Wesleyan. And back in 2009, we saw a website where you could play FIFA online and bet on it. And we'd been playing our teammates for like, $20 a game in FIFA in person. And we were like, I wonder why this isn't, a bigger business. And we looked into it. And we wanted to do it sophomore year of college, but we were just too busy playing soccer and partying. And
The productive stuff.
the productive stuff that you think is productive as a 20-year-old, and then you regret as a 30-year-old. So we went our separate ways after college, worked a few jobs, and both decided that working for other people wasn't for us long term. And we bumped into each other at the gym and decided to rekindle the flame and pursue a business where you could play video games at bars and play in FIFA tournaments. So we did that at the beginning of 2015. Got AB InBev and EA as sponsors. And then I met Strauss, the CEO of Take-Two, and he invested at the beginning of 2016. And we used that funding to launch playerslaunch.co, where you could play FIFA and bet on it 24/7, 365. And we bootstrapped that for a couple of years, got into Y Combinator, raised money from the co-founders of Twitch, Griffin Gaming Partners, Comcast, many more I'll talk about later. And so now we have two products, and we've done $200 million in bets from 1 million players all time. And our newest product is growing really fast. And we're going to be raising a bridge round that we thought would take a long time, but it might already be closed. So I'm happy to share more about that later.
Well, amazing. It sounds like there's like a ton of founder market fit there. I love the gym and soccer. They play soccer. Now the first game you're betting on is doing FIFA stuff. The first game, I guess, Players Lounge supported rather was FIFA. And you're combining the best of both worlds. You're taking what you did when you were 20 and you're now allowing people to do it in bars.
It's complete founder market fit, right? Like, we like playing games, we like betting against each other, and we figure there are millions of Americans and people globally who want to do this thing. So we pursued it.
Got it. And I guess maybe that's a great place to start. You talked about, you already answered one of my first questions, which was, what games you guys start with. And it sounds like you started with FIFA. And so I'm wondering, this might be an obvious question. And if it is, just say so. But,
sure.
Why a sports game first for the betting world? And I'm hunting in the case that there's actually some nuance that I haven't thought about that's not immediately obvious, such that we bet on sports in real life. Why would we not bet on esports that are sports oriented?
Sure. Yeah, it's a good question. I think the easiest answer is we wanted to start with a single game that we played ourselves and build a product that we wanted to use ourselves. And so at that time, we were huge FIFA players, and we knew there were a lot of people around the country that wanted to play FIFA and bet on it. And so we figured we could launch this website with, 60 grand was our first angel check. And we bootstrapped that for like 2 years. And trying to scale a head-to-head platform with no marketing resources was grueling. It was really hard. The head-to-head business is pretty difficult to scale, but we've done it better than anybody else. As I mentioned, we were about to pass $200 million in bets total on that, and that product is predominantly Madden, NBA 2K, and FIFA. Mm-hmm. So your question about why sports games is, that was the experience that we had in person, right? Is you're playing with your buddies and somebody wants to bet $10 on the game to make it more fun and make sure everybody's trying their hardest, right? The bet is in itself really just like a social contract that both people are going to try their hardest. So at the end of the game, somebody doesn't make some whimpering excuse about why they lost, right? When money's on the line, people try their hardest.
It's always a bad team.
It's always a bad team. It's the ref. It's unlucky. So the sports games was just 1v1 from a game design perspective. It's really obvious what you're betting on, and you're betting on yourself to score more points than the opponent, whether that's in simulation football, simulation soccer, or simulation basketball. It's like a super clear and obvious betting model.
Okay, I see. And then you keep using this word head to head. One would intuit it means one person betting against one other person. Just wanted to clarify what head to head actually in your space means.
For sure. So head to head is exactly what you said. It's player versus player. And in sports games, that's 1v1. Okay. There are other game modes in like 2K that are 5v5, et cetera, or 2v2 in FIFA. But 1v1 is the easiest to matchmake for frankly.
I see.
Right. So that's another reason
Sure.
that sports games are so interesting, because you don't have to fill up a team. It's just Alex is a good FIFA player and she wants to play somebody right now for $5 on PS5. We have a matchmaking service and a skill rating system where we can do that pretty well.
Okay. So in general, though, the bets that Players Lounge, at least in the beginning of your company's days, were betting on were wins and losses, essentially.
Yeah,
Not
just
not
strictly, yeah.
necessarily specific outcomes in the game.
Right. So the specific outcomes might be referred to as more like prop bets, right? The
Okay.
Genji reference that you made. That's like an obscure market, that is like really difficult to fill out. So our head-to-head product, it's called Players on Sports. You can download it on the iOS store. That's done $200 million in bets of just matching up one player against another player. Both players are betting, I will win this match, and we take a 10% service fee of however much they bet.
I see. Got it. Okay, cool. Interesting. Well, good thing I didn't do that because I guess it's niche and the prop bets are an obscure space that nobody wants to do.
Yeah.
I guess in a way, the way that we were thinking about that, and maybe this is something interesting to talk about, is right now you're talking about this head-to-head betting dynamic, which means the two players that are playing the game are betting on themselves. The way that we were thinking about those prop bets occurring were a little bit more for the audience, for somebody who's watching other people do the head-to-head competition. So, like, for example, if I were watching I don't know, the LCS, and I would bet that T1 would die, this would be his KDA ratio or something like that.
Sure.
And so how does Players Lounge think about those prop bets versus the head-to-head bets? Is that like a horizontal business expansion? Or I guess maybe I'll just stop
No,
there. Yeah.
it's completely fine. This is where like a good legal distinction is important. Is if Alex is not playing in the match, if her skill, her inputs don't affect the outcome of the match, that's gambling. So Alex versus Zach in a $10 game of FIFA is a skill game. Thousands of inputs over the course of 20 minutes to determine who's going to win the result, right? Alex betting on the LCS where she's not playing it, presumably that's gambling. So we don't offer that service, maybe in the future at some point, but like we're a skill game operator and we're more focused on you betting on yourself, whether it's in a head-to-head match or in our new product where you can bet on how many kills you'll get in a game of Apex or Valorant.
Got it. Okay, that's actually really interesting.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't, it's a nuance that I didn't necessarily appreciate.
Yeah, it's the difference between like daily fantasy sports and sports betting, right? Daily
I see.
fantasy sports is mathematically a game of skill, whereas sports gambling is legally defined as gambling.
Got it. Okay, I see. Yeah, maybe we'll touch upon like the player betting and gambling at large a bit later, but want to continue on the path of talking about Players Lounge and your products. And you're talking about how head-to-head platforms are really, really hard to grow. How do
Yeah.
you guys think about product growth? Does that come from more business partners, from more games, or more players, such that the betting in the game is more robust?
Fair question. So Players Lounge Sports, as I mentioned, we're focused on Madden, NBA 2K, and FIFA. That business is primarily 1v1, head-to-head player matchmaking. They're betting on who's going to win this game between the two of them. We rebranded the company so that our new product, Players Lounge, that's where Alex is betting on how many kills she'll get in a game of Apex.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of product growth, sorry, my cat's getting in the way. In terms of product growth there, we're, the sports product, Players on Sports, is primarily 1v1 games, premium games like Madden and 2K. So, maybe 20 million units per year in the US globally. Whereas Players Lounge is looking at the really big AAA free to play games that are massively popular globally. So our new product has, MAUs in the like 500 million range, whereas the sports product might have MAUs in like the 50 million range.
Okay, got it. So you started with sports, but now you're shifting more into the PvP competitive realm of just PC hardcore like console games.
Sure. So our newer product that's called Players Lounge, it's available on the iOS store in the US. That is Alex is a 1 kill a game Apex player. And so Alex can bet on, am I going to get 1 kill this next game, 2 kills, 3 kills, 5 kills, etc. And that product more resembles a sports book, and where Alex is betting against the house. So she might, risk $5 to win $5 if she gets that 1 kill. Or she might risk $5 to win $20 if she gets 4 kills, right? But you are betting on yourself and how that match will be determined. So that's why it's still a game of skill.
Okay. And this is the distinction between the and forgive my like naivete around some of like the jargon in terms of like head to head and whatever. There's also this other
No,
word,
there's some nuances to it. Yeah, peer to peer, head to head, player versus player, whatever you want to call it.
So but in the terms of betting against the house, right? You're not necessarily betting, like you said before, in NBA 2K, you have one player A, player B, that's peer to peer, that's head to head. I bet that I will beat you. In this type of betting dynamic, you're betting against the house that XYZ person would perform to these certain caliber points. Like I got 5 kills, whatever.
Yeah,
not
you're betting against your own skill level, basically.
I see. Got it. And is there any specific, when you think about the next games to grow into in that regard, what are the kinds of criteria that these games need to have ostensibly besides just being PvP, like online games? Like why Apex and why Valorant first?
Sure.
Why not League?
Completely fair question, right? And part of it goes back to why we started with just FIFA, right? We played a lot of FIFA. We understood the game deeply, and we liked betting on it ourselves. And so we launched this product with Call of Duty. The next game we put on was Apex. Then we added Valorant because it was really clear to players in a battle royale game of why I'm going to bet on how many kills I'll get and what place I will finish at the end of the game, right? So those are the two bets that you could take. And so that doesn't really need any explanation to the average gamer. Whereas trying to get a lot of people to take the Genji bet of how many, what percent damage Genji will get this game, that's like a pretty deep and nuanced bet that, first of all, is gambling in the first place, so we don't do it. But it's just Alex knows she finishes top 5, top 10 in Apex this frequently, so she can take that bet. She knows she gets 1 kill a game in Apex, so maybe she's going to roll the dice and try to get 3 kills this game, but for a bigger payout.
Got it. Okay. So it's really the level of complexity for the game that's like, in Battle Royale might be a little bit more obvious. In FIFA, it's a little bit more, it's clear. Oh, I win or I don't win. But for some of the more complicated, maybe MOBAs and maybe even like team-based shooters, right? So it's the kinds of bets, those prop bets that I was talking about. That's intuitive to me because I play some of those games, and but it's not really as mass market. And maybe that's a question. Oh, sorry, go.
Sorry to cut you off. We try to work like really heavily with the mom test, right? So like if you had to explain to your mom what the product is, if you don't think you can communicate that in a sentence and have her understand it as a non-gamer, I'm assuming heavily here that your mom doesn't play team-based shooters or MOBAs.
She does not. She tried to play Detroit Becoming Human, and apparently the game was, quote, too fast for her. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever played Detroit Becoming Human, but it's like, decide, save the man or don't save the man. Here's like literally 45 seconds to hit the square button. And mom's like, I don't know what square button is. I'm like,
yeah.
Okay.
For sure. So if we can't explain to your mom in a sentence and have her understand that you need to get this many kills in this next game to win the challenge, it might be too complex, right? So battle royales are the easiest to understand. Team-based shooters, we think, are next easiest to understand. MOBAs are more complicated, but still relatively easy to understand. And so that's the kind of like the order of operations. So we look at how many players play the game in the US, how clear is it when we first think about the game of what you would bet on, and if people would like to bet on it. And, global audience is a second thought because we'll expand globally in the near future. So those are the considerations.
I see. And then I guess what percentage, since you were saying that the prop betting thing that I was talking about earlier is more of a audience as a taking bets on something else, which would be gambling. So your market for peer-to-peer or head-to-head betting is actually a subset of the people that play the game themselves.
Yes.
And so what on average do you think what on average like conversion rates to betting do you guys typically see in games? Like how many people that play FIFA typically also have interest in betting on themselves? I would assume that they have to be of like a fairly like high skill caliber.
You would think that, but I mean, we have a skill rating system on our head-to-head product that's pretty robust, and it's difficult to understand how good a player is in 5 or 10 games. This is a problem that all AAA titles deal with, and they have way more data, right? Hundreds of games before they can accurately understand somebody's handicap. But we match players up who I'm not very good at FIFA, right? At my best, I might have been like a B, maybe a B plus player. And so I don't want to play against the top players in the world. I want to play against people who are my level. I want to throw down $5 or $10 and get a rush playing the game that I love playing so much. And so that's like the core demo that we're targeting, which is for certain millions of Americans and tens of millions of players globally.
Okay, got it. So it's just for the general, your average everyday Joe Schmo who wants to bet on themselves. And this typically happens to be like, when you do the math, like, maybe some sort of like portion, 20% maybe of the current player base that's playing FIFA or those games in general.
Yeah, reasonable.
Got it. Interesting. And so I want to ask a little bit about maybe some of the operational challenges of building in this space. We've talked a lot about, okay, yeah, like you're betting that I would get 5 kills and I'm betting that I would win this game. But that game log of data is stored on probably the server side of the games themselves. So I might report to Players Lounge that I got 5 kills. And so I did what I said I was going to do. So therefore, I win my bet against the house. How do you guys verify the outcomes that the players did what they said they were going to do?
Great question. So on Players Lounge Sports, the head-to-head model, both players report the score. Okay. So there's a 2-sided reporting system. And in 99% of the games, Zach plays Alex. Alex beats Zach. Alex says, I won 3-2. Zach confirms, yes, I lost 2-3. And Alex wins the money. In 1% of those games, Zach complains, oh, I had lag. Alex disconnected. Zach won, And so we innovated on the score reporting system in a big way. That was why we bootstrapped for 2 years, so that we could get that dispute rate, is what it's called, when one of the players disagrees with the results, down to a very limited number. An operational challenge is you need customer support admins, referees basically, to come in and resolve this dispute between Alex and Zach.
Sure.
Alex won 3-2. Zach says he won 2-3. Both players need to submit some type of evidence of the result of the game. And there's some petty squabbling between the players, right? So, there's a customer support and live support element to the game that's more complex than people think. When we launched the business in 2016, we had no idea it was going to be that big of a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
When it was just me, Austin, and our co-founder, Dan, I handled every customer support ticket. So I would be on a date and the woman would go to the bathroom for a second and I would be furiously handling intercom tickets while she was gone, trying to settle a dispute between two 20-year-olds across the country, squabbling over Alex was using this cheesy meta, what the hell,
Oh.
And then she would come back to the table and I'd slam down some responses and put my phone away, So it's definitely more complex on the head-to-head business to resolve those types of things than people appreciate. You also have a player liquidity issue, which is a function of how good your marketing is and how many marketing dollars you have. So filling out a real-time marketplace of players of a variety of skill levels on a variety of platforms, looking to play at different hours of the day for different betting denominations, is that's a bunch of different cross segmentations of a marketplace. So dozens of competitors have popped up over the last couple of years and tried to do this without appreciating how difficult it is to support that real-time marketplace. And there's a reason that we're several X bigger than the next biggest competitor, because we're smart, college-educated people. We're big gamers, and we've sunk a lot of time and a lot of investor money into building the best product out there.
Yeah. And I think that makes a lot of sense, because even from the game studio side where we're thinking about player liquidity in terms of matchmaking. And then for you guys, let's just say that there's a Venn diagram of players, right? You're a subset inside that player set. So you've already just made your market and your matchmaking liquidity pool even smaller,
For sure.
simply because of like the appetite for the head-to-head betting. But yeah, I think it's really interesting to hear some of the stories that you had originally building the company for verifying those outcomes. I've definitely played a game called on the Dueling Network, which was a Yu-Gi-Oh open free format, no game logic embedded in the actual in the web browser at all. So basically, if I attacked you and I said, "Hey, I just took out 2,000 of your life points," you would have to deduct from your side of the table 2,000 life points.
Oh, that's a digital board game experience.
Oh my
It's
gosh,
a nightmare.
Honestly, I have such fond memories fighting in this like janky chat box with people.
Maybe
over the
with
internet.
somewhat rosy colored glasses looking back on it.
Yeah. And in a way, like that is okay for that sort of situation because you're playing a card game, but there's no money at stake, right? And so I think it obviously becomes, completely maximized or like exacerbated such that you have money on the table.
Yeah.
And so this leads into sort of like my next question is like, who controls the fulfillment / like cash transfer of the payment?
Players Lounge.
Players Lounge. Okay.
Yeah. So the way it works is Alex is a new user. She goes through KYC, know your customer verification, to make sure to be clear, I should have said this earlier. You have to be 18 plus and in an eligible state to use any of our products. We do.
Oh, okay.
So you have to show us, your government ID. You have to verify a bunch of different things to make sure that you're in. We have to geofence you and make sure you're in a verified state. And after that, then you can start playing for real money, right? So a lot of products out there operate in, somewhat looser, I'll say operational zones of doing this type of thing. And what that endangers is, one, there are very severe penalties for breaking these types of laws. Austin and I have no interest in facing those kind of consequences. They're serious. And secondly, it jeopardizes your relationship with the payment processors, which is another huge part of the operational hurdle to run any real money gaming business. Mm-hmm. So Alex comes on, she goes through KYC, she deposits $10, then she plays. So there's just like a bunch of hurdles that people don't appreciate of how you have to verify Alex's ID, geofencer, accept her money, etc. It seems like a much easier business to scale than people might appreciate.
Sure. Yeah, even just like the hurdles, I remember from some of the Web3 research that I was doing for like an episode on the legal ramifications of Web3, and Web3 is obviously it's an entire other can of worms, but
sure.
For securitization and for KYC and AML, actually those rules were different state by state by state. And so it was just like I was like, I don't know, like there's just too many states and there's too many people, so it's obviously like quite difficult. But basically, you guys through the payment providers, I as a player would deposit funds into my Players Lounge account, and then that would get withdrawn and transfer from my account to another Players Lounge account, right? And those accounts are ostensibly linked to some sort of bank provider or PayPal or something like that.
Yeah, similar. Okay. I mean, think about how like Venmo works, right? You put money in, it sits in your account, but when you send money from, Alex to your friend, it's not that money's moving from your Chase account to their Chase account. It's that you've put money into Venmo. Venmo's holding that money in escrow. Then they're moving numbers around on the back end. And when your friend goes to withdraw, then there's a realization of those funds, right? So it's like kind of similar to, that's the simple way to explain it.
Yeah, got it. And then for you guys, in terms of the business models, a couple, earlier you mentioned that you guys take a 10% take rate on those bets. So if I bet $10, right, you guys would take $1 and then the 9 would go into escrow, and then they would get transferred to the other player if they were to win or lose, right?
Yeah. And that it's actually like players have a hard time understanding the 10%. Some players think it's 20%, and it like literally comes down to a misunderstanding of the distributive property of multiplication over addition. So like Alex bets 5, Zach bets 5. Players think that 10% of that. Let's say Alex bets $10 and Zach bets $10. Players think that we're taking 20% when we take $2 from $10, because they're adding 10% and 10% and thinking that that's 20%.
Oh.
And so I've literally tried to explain this to I've made YouTube videos explaining why that $18 from $20 is 10% and not 20%. And it's surprisingly difficult to explain to people.
You can make them all take the GMAT.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah.
They would learn.
We're talking PSAT type stuff, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I see. I got it. But okay. But you take the 10% of the pool
10% of the pool, exactly,
of the two players. Okay, I see.
Yeah.
And I guess that's obviously that's a pretty typical model, I would probably say, for betting. Were there any other models that you guys explored, or why is this the correct fit for you guys, and why 10%, if that's even a reasonable question to ask?
No, it's a fair question. It was a nice, easy number to understand. It was simple math that people could understand, and it's a pretty reasonable service fee. So that's the head-to-head business, right? That's Players on Sports. That's the one that's done 200 million in bets over the last couple of years. Our new product, which is the focus of the company, which is Players Lounge, that's where you bet against the house. So that's a very different business model, because Alex is betting $5 that she'll get 2 kills or more, right? If she loses that bet, she loses all $5. If she wins that bet, depending on what the odds are for your skill level, that might have been bet 5 to win 15. So that business can actually lose money, right? In the same way that a sports book can lose money. Whereas our head-to-head business, which is more like a poker room model, is just get butts in seats, keep them playing, and you take 10% of every dollar that comes through it. So it's a more sure and certain 10% fee, but it's more difficult to match make and to provide the live services. Whereas the Bet Against the House product, our newer product, has way better underlying metrics, because all I need to do is to get Alex into the system through KYC, understand our product, and then she plays whenever she wants. There's no matchmaking. There's no, disputes on what happened in the game. It's you play the game and your bet resolves or not, and then you go play the next game right away. There's no waiting for the next player who's at your skill level, at your time, at your denomination on your game title, right? So it's just a much more efficient match-to-match betting process.
Okay, got it. Okay, so in the two products, right? You've got one that has probably lower DAU, right? With a consistently and solidly high ARPDAU, because you're consistently taking 10% of all the cash that passes that system. And then on the flip side, you have probably something like the Players Lounge, which is running something on Apex or Valorant, right, where people are making bets against the house. The DAUs are higher because people can do that whenever they want. There's no matchmaking at all. But some of those players are literally negative LTV for you guys, because they are just extracting out of the house because they're too good. They always win, basically. Right.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And when you go to a casino, there's a reason that the poker room, occupies 3 to 5% of the square footage, and the slots and table games occupy the rest, right? The poker rooms are not full up butts in seats, because it's a different player experience than a lot of people want. A lot of people, when they go to a casino, they want to play with their friends. They want to win and lose together with the other players at the table. They don't want to play against other players, because it's a different confrontational experience, right? And so a couple of years ago, Steve Wynn actually cold called me, and I didn't know who he was. And if you don't know who he is, he's the
hotel.
Most famous. Yeah, he's a hotelier. He's a casino magnate. He's a billionaire, right? And I picked up the phone and I called him, and I ended up having lunch with him. And he was like, "You seem like a bright dude. I like you. How can I help you?" And I was like, "Oh, we've got this head-to-head product. It's growing really fast. We just went through Y Combinator, blah, blah, blah." And he's like, "That's a cool business, but I'm telling you, I've run casinos since before you were born, and poker rooms are really tough businesses to scale. You should really be thinking about what is the rest of your experience that you can build out." And I was like, "Oh, well, we're going to make it work. And I wish I'd listened to the billionaire years ago and started working on this, bet against the house product sooner. But you have to take your lessons as you do. So
I see. Okay, so you built this whole business that has, the billionaire suggested that you do house betting. And we just talked about how for some of those players, they might be really good, so they're actually value extracted from the system. For you guys, how do you balance that system on your end to make sure that for Players Lounge, I assume that you're the house in this case,
yep.
that you aren't, constantly like this isn't kind of like a bleeding money situation. How do you make sure that, well, actually, in a way that your players lose?
No, I mean it's a fair question, and it's a difficult one, right? It's the reason that people have struggled to scale this space, and we're doing the best of anyone has ever done at it. But players come in, and we know their skill level, and if Alex bets, I'm a 1 kill a game player, and I'm going to get 3 kills this next game, we know the mathematical likelihood of that happening. She does it once. Okay, maybe that's like a 1 in 3 thing type happening, right? She does it a second time in a row. Not great odds of that happening. She does it a third and fourth time in a row. Something looks suspicious here, right? Maybe Alex is playing on a Smurf account. Maybe Alex has her friend playing for her. So the lines change over time because we're trying to predict what your actual skill level is when you're playing for money. There's definitely a difference in your play when you're playing for funsies and just dropping hot and getting slaughtered versus, oh man, I've got $5 on this. I got to get top 3 and I got to get 3 kills. You're going to play the game very differently in the same way that you play differently when you play pickup sports versus tournament play, right? And so it's just a kind of a different balance. So we look at every bet we offer to players. We look at how well they do. And we're aspiring on any given day to be somewhere in the like 5 to 15% hold. So for every 5 cents that Alex bets, we hope that 5 of it stays with us.
Okay.
So there are some players who come in, they win a couple $100 in a day. Their lines are going to get harder because that's what they're telling our skill system, is that we're actually under handicapping them. So their lines get harder, their payouts get a little harder. Whereas Zach, not very good, he comes in and loses money. So we make his challenges easier and we make his payouts bigger because we don't want players to be too outside of that range. The goal is to keep players butts in seats for as long as possible, having the most fun as they can. And for us, what we see as optimal retention is players win some money and lose some money, but it doesn't go too heavily in one direction. You want to keep players in like the flow state of somewhere between anxiety and exhilaration.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're actively tuning that system, right? So
for sure. Every day. Yeah.
And
hours per day. In my personal work, we've got a crack data scientist working on it. And like that's, you don't want to cheap out on the math in a sports book for sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so I would suppose, though, that like you were saying before, that probably players would get smart. They'll make Smurf accounts. They'll like do all the things to trick your system into making them think that they're not who they say they are. And that actually probably seems like a total pain in the ass.
It's an exciting math and social psychology problem to solve. And each person that beats us for a couple $100, we take our lick. Yeah. We learn a lesson, we patch a hole in the system, and then we move on. But there's a whack-a-mole element to it. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And so, we've talked a little bit about Players Lounge and your 2 products, the head-to-head platform and the betting against the house. We talked about betting player money. So one of the things that I'm just interested in hearing your take on, and maybe we can talk about this in a more like hypothetical, ideal sort of world. This thing that the person and I in the bar were arguing about were, like right now, obviously the closest things that we have to that kind of betting stuff was like sports betting IRL. And that's something that we've just talked about. It's, you need to be a verified operator of sports betting. I go to the Kentucky Derby and I bet on Secretariat. But in order to do this, like there's tons of restrictions, hoops to jump through, licensing, regulation, age restrictions, and responsible gambling measures, deposit limits, AML, KYC, and a bunch of other stuff, right? One of the things that this person and I were talking about were instead of betting money on an outcome, why would you not bet in-game items, currencies, or skills, or like skins? So, for example, what we would do I would say, hey, I bet on the house, not that I would spend $5, but that I bet my ultimate skin, or I bet some sort of like currency, platinum and Diablo 4 or something like
Sure.
that against an outcome. How would that change any of the gambling perceptions in terms of maybe the regulatory space? I just don't even know, right?
Sure. I am by no means a legal expert. We've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years on really good legal experts to do this work for us. And my very rough understanding of it is every state defines a game of skill versus a game of chance differently.
Mhm.
Some states define that as if Alex is risking something that has real world value, that's gambling. And those are states where we don't operate, right? So if your Genji skin has real world value in that state according to that state's laws, then you betting that might constitute gambling. How much of Alex's skill in the competition determines the results of the competition? That's another factor in the legal equation, right? So all of these things kind of combine state to state to allow some players in some states to play and others to not, right? But it gets a lit like CS:GO lounge, skins gambling. There's been like a bunch of sticky and nefarious things, very loosely regulated. A lot of them are just like outright like operating illegal gambling organizations, right? And so that's like a really it's not even gray. It's just like a black market that we're like never going to operate in because like, we've got money from like Y Combinator and some very successful folks. And like, we're not going to jeopardize ourselves or any investor money by doing something like that. It's a very common question of like, why can't I just bet this thing? And in Web3, there's a lot of questions around like, is this actually a security or is it not? Is this actually a game of skill or is it not? Are you risking something of real world value or not? There's a lot of questions about the whole thing, and it's just very loosely regulated.
Yeah. And I mean, even you can look at that happening in AAA with FIFA, with the regulations that happen in Belgium on the loot box system, right? Because you're right, FIFA is a game of skill. And well, I have particular opinions on loot boxes and their relationship to the game, whatever. But in a way, and I think any kind of loot box or card pack system is very similar, right? There is not, I call it not pay to win, but I call it pay to compete, right? Where you might need specific cards or you might need specific players to do well, but however, it does not take away from the fact that you still fundamentally have to perform, right?
Yeah.
And beat people in the game, right? So I think it's a really interesting, like fine line, like you're saying, where there's a ton of grayness around like what betting and what gambling means. And
there's a reason that FIFA does not let you do the thing that you're talking about, right? You cannot like play for pink slips and risk your Ronaldo card versus their Messi card. That would be like start to get into murkier waters for EA.
Got it.
There's a reason AAA companies do not do that.
And that's because if they were to do that, that would be defined as gambling.
I can't say that, but like it just becomes more difficult to offer that service. And so it's like the risk reward profile there just doesn't seem to be worth it for these AAA publishers.
Oh, fascinating. Yeah, because it sounds like, I mean, we've been, the whole like, a lot of the premise of sort of like the work that's being done is like bet on yourself. This way it's not gambling. Why is it so important to avoid being classified as a gambling thing? Is it just because the legal repercussions are really high? Because there are true casinos, like you said, that are defined as gambling. So like why is everybody in the gaming industry working so hard to not be defined as gambling?
Well, one, like the penalties are so severe. Like in Louisiana, where I'm from, if you operate an illegal gambling organization, you could literally do years, plural, of hard time in some very rough prisons. And like maybe you're listening to the podcast, but I'm not a huge guy. I'm like 5'9", 170. I would not do well in a very hard prison in Louisiana. So like I have no interest in touching that with a 100-foot pole, So that's one reason. The other is, gambling organizations, firms, they pay a lot of money per year to state regulatory bodies to be able to offer those services in a regulated format. And so there's like some, not cartel, but it's like an oligopoly type thing of like there's only so many licenses per state, there's only so many operators per state. So you just really don't want to run afoul of those types of things.
Okay. Got it. So basically, to be a gambling house, you'd have to do a ton of work to do it the right way. And the penalties and the repercussions for doing it the wrong way are massive and titanic. So
absolutely massive.
Unless you're like, I absolutely know that at the end of the day, like my returns from this venture of gambling are going to be positively accretive to enough, and I have enough upfront cash reserves to pay regulatory licenses. I have the connections to get these things done in this specific state. It's basically like not necessarily worth it. And so for maybe a casino house that's located in Las Vegas specifically, they're dealing with Las Vegas, the state. They're dealing with Nevada, the state, Las Vegas, the county. It's just like one-to-one relationship versus a game has a broad, gigantic global audience. Setting up a gambling mechanic for something in 50 states and even other continents would just be too onerous in a way.
Yeah. I think the average person who doesn't work in like real money gaming, it's really difficult to appreciate the operational hurdles to offer any real money gaming, whether it's game of skill or game of chance, right? But in the US, for instance, you might have a small state like New Jersey, and you might be paying millions of dollars per year as a single operator to the state of New Jersey for the license to offer sports gambling. Then in sports gambling, for some legally idiosyncratic rules, you have to have servers, hardware in the state of New Jersey. And so you need hundreds of thousands of dollars in expenses there. So there are like live ops costs, to put it in gaming terms, or live services costs that people really do not appreciate. So the cost to just offer the service of sports gambling in New Jersey is to the tune of millions of dollars per year in expenses. And that's before any of your marketing. And that's before how does the thing actually perform in terms of what percent of every dollar do you really keep, right?
Okay.
So sports gambling is a very expensive enterprise to enter.
I see. Okay, wow, I'm learning a lot. Yeah, I think that's the point. I think I'm trying to appreciate the operational nuance, because I think I've been asking myself this question. I'm like, everybody's just trying to avoid gambling. Is it really so bad? Like, and sounds like it's a shit show to set up.
Yeah, and there's a reason these rules are set up as they are, right? Like, yeah,
for the safety of the citizens,
consumers,
et cetera.
So
yeah, absolutely, which makes a ton of sense. I think I also myself did not necessarily appreciate the nuance of how operationally difficult it is to establish some of these licenses or rules, even if it's not even if it's not gambling. Even it seems in your space in the head-to-head betting, there's still a substantial number of operational hurdles that you guys kind of need to jump through. And so to start, wrapping up, we kicked off this podcast, talking about Skillz, right? And I want to end on a better note than how we began, maybe due to the unfortunate decline of Skillz' stock price. And I'd love to get your take, sort of, why do you think Skillz, what happened to Skillz? And like, if you were there at that company, what are some of the things that you would have maybe done differently?
Sure. So first and foremost, I've met Andrew a bunch of times. He's a brilliant dude, big gamer, very, very bright. Andrew Paradis is the CEO of Skillz. They're massively successful, one of the first publicly traded esports companies. But the public markets have not been kind to a lot of companies, but in particular, esports companies. And I think part of that is because Skillz was operating in two different verticals, as I understand it. They were offering the B2B side of the business, where they were putting their software into games and offering real money components. And then they had a few games themselves. And the games they offer are like solitaire, spades, blackjack. Like these are games. They're not sports. right?
Mm-hmm.
I would say FIFA is much closer to a sport, an esport, than solitaire or spades or blackjack, right? There's a difference between, in my mind, between sports and games. And so when you look at FaZe Clan, Super League Gaming, Esports Entertainment Group, Skillz, these are all like quote unquote esports companies, but like they're actually operating in like a different vertical. It's just that the quote unquote esports name was very interesting to pursue on the public markets in the last few years. It was like the meta, right?
Sure.
One of the problems with their business, what I might have done differently, is I don't really believe in skill games. I don't know if I believe that there are millions of players out there who want to bet against another person and how well they'll do in solitaire or spades or blackjack.
Okay.
What I know with certainty is that there are millions of people out there who want to play FIFA every day and they want to play it competitively every day. And another version of that is they want to bet on the result. And so they're kind of offering like casual or even hyper casual esports, if you can even call them esports, versus we're offering you a simulation of a tournament experience in FIFA or Madden or 2K or Apex or Valorant or League, whatever, right? So we're targeting AAA games, whereas they're targeting single A, double A games. Now, again, like Andrew's an incredibly successful dude. Skillz has broken ground in ways that I could only aspire to. But we're trying to build an entertainment experience for millions of gamers who want to play AA and AAA games. And so that's our focus. And I think that's like a super core differentiator between the two.
Yeah. Okay. I see. And I get, and Skillz, I think, was mostly mobile games in a way, right?
Almost entirely. I don't think
think
they ever offered anything outside of mobile games.
Yeah. Okay. That's
And I
what I
don't
thought
know
too.
I don't know if you could characterize any of the games they offer as even like core or mid-core or hardcore. They're all like
No, they're
casual,
like
hyper
very
casual. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that was my question, right? I had like three suppositions. One, it has something to fundamentally do with the platform, right? So like my bets don't register. The cash payment system doesn't work. When I deposit, nothing happens. Like there's something wrong with the app, the product itself. And
Sure.
then there was two, kind of like the business model isn't quite figured out, right? It's like a not in the similar way that esports is still struggling of how to turn itself into a profitable enterprise.
Yeah.
It's just it's COGS and CapEx are just too high.
Yeah.
Compared to its revenue. It was either that or it was maybe a lower lack of demand for that kind of actual activity, which it sounds like your supposition it is. So for Skillz, unlike FIFA or unlike maybe some of the PvP games that you guys have started to partner with, like Valorant and Apex, it's whatever, the demand for making those kinds of head-to-head bets was less present than was lower than I guess initially expected.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. And again, like I'm not throwing shade at Skillz. Like Andrew's done some incredible things. To take an esports company public is wild, right? Like when you were 15 playing whatever, game at 15, I was playing Halo 2 on Xbox when I was 15. If you were to tell me, 20 years ago, 18 years ago, that now there would be people making millions of dollars a year as streamers or playing as, playing professional video games, I would have been like, sign me up. I'm not going to college. That's what I'm doing, So it's a very different and very cool world that we live in now.
Yeah. And absolutely. I think it's also just really cool, but it's interesting to sort of understand sort of like what, what can we learn from a company like Skillz based on so they've been around like for a while, like you said, they were the ones to do it first. And sort of what are the things that, for the future of the head-to-head player betting market, what is the way to grow and learn from the prior companies that pursued the same space.
Yeah.
And so, damn, I don't know. Maybe now, like I'm a believer. I would
hope so. Our head-to-head business is very profitable.
I would bet that player betting is successful.
I see what you did there. Okay, I like that.
Yeah. And so actually, before we wrap, this has been such an awesome episode, Zach, and I personally have learned a ton. Thank you for elucidating the differences between head-to-head on the house, what gambling is, and some of the state-by-state restrictions.
Sure.
I want to make a quick repeat announcement to our listeners. Many of you might have heard this on our announcement in the roundtable segment, as well as in the weekly newsletter that we released the first week of July. But we've turned a new leaf here at Naavik. We're excited to launch the Open Gaming Research Initiative, acronym OGRI. It encompasses all the same free content as you've come to enjoy at Naavik, like the Naavik Digest and this podcast. And it will take our production to a new level. Our new research will include things like game team constructions, genre reports, market updates, deep dives into important gaming companies and trends, and new podcast episodes that explore the tactics behind winning game teams and more. This initiative is made possible by our outstanding crew of creators. Woo! As well as our 12 fantastic launch partners. And so to learn more, to sign up, to receive the updates, visit naavik.co/ogri.com. And so now that we're done with a plug for ourselves, Zach, if there's anyone out there that wants to get in touch with you from the audience for any reason, how can they reach out?
Slide in my LinkedIn DMs. I'm very active on LinkedIn.
Okay.
That's the best place to reach me. If you are a bright engineer who really likes video games, reach out to me. If you are an investor interested in the space or learning more about the company, reach out to me. Or if you're just, somebody who works at a studio and you're interested in exploring real money gaming, please reach out, because we're always looking to work with up and coming games. And, that's the best place to find me.
Sweet. Okay. And so on that note, we'll be concluding. Big thank you, Zach, for coming. Thank you to our listeners. I'll be back in 2 weeks. And feel free to hit me up at alexandra@naavik.co if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. We'd love to hear your feedback.
Don't forget to congratulate Alex on finishing business school and entering the real world.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, we're out here and kicking off the real gig quite soon. So
very excited for you.
Yeah. All right. With that, au revoir, and we're out.
If you enjoyed today's episode, whether on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, or give a 5-star review. And if you want to reach out or provide feedback, shoot us a note at podcast@naavik.co or find us on Twitter and LinkedIn. Plus, if you want to learn more about what Naavik has to offer, make sure to check out our website, www.naavik.co. There, you can sign up for the #1 games industry newsletter, Naavik Digest, or contact us to learn about our wide-ranging consulting and advisory services. Again, that is www.naavik.co. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.